Captain Jake Morrison sat in the cold metal chair and looked across the table at the alien creature. The thing was huge, almost 8 feet tall, even while sitting down. Its skin looked like green leather with metal pieces stuck into its head and neck. The creature's yellow eyes glowed in the dim light of the meeting room. This was Ambassador Zethkar of the Valkyrian Empire. Next to him sat a smaller alien of the same type, taking notes on a strange device. Behind Jake sat 2 other humans. Lisa Hayes was the best diplomat Earth had ever sent to the stars. Pete Jackson was a military man who knew more about alien weapons than anyone else alive. The meeting room was on Nexus Prime, a giant space station that floated between the stars. Hundreds of different alien races came here to trade and talk. The air smelled like metal and recycling systems. Through the thick windows, Jake could see ships from dozens of worlds docked at the station. Zethkar spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding rocks. Human Captain Morrison, the Valkyrian Empire has been very patient with your kind. We have watched you spread to 43 star systems. We have allowed you to exist without paying tribute to us. This patience ends now. Jake said nothing. He kept his face calm and waited. The alien continued. You will surrender your outer colonies to Imperial control. Your people will serve the Empire as all intelligent species must. You have 30 of your Earth days to comply. If you refuse, we will destroy every human world and kill every human in space. The smaller alien, Drexel, made clicking sounds that Jake's translator said was laughter. The Empire has conquered over 200 star systems, human. We have crushed 17 different species. Our war fleets are the strongest force in this part of the galaxy. You cannot resist us. Jake looked at his hands for a moment, then back at the aliens. We appreciate you coming all this way to talk to us, but we have to decline your offer. Zethkar's metal implant sparked a little. Decline? You think this is a negotiation? This is a command from Emperor Voskar himself. The Valkyrian Empire does not make requests. We give orders. I understand, Jake said. But humans don't take orders from anyone except other humans. We've never submitted to any empire, and we're not going to start now. The room went quiet. Through the walls they could hear the distant hum of the space station's engines and life support systems. Somewhere far away, a ship was docking with loud metal sounds. Drexel leaned forward. Perhaps you do not understand the situation, human. The Empire's war fleets contain over 50,000 ships. Our smallest vessels carry weapons that can crack planets. We have soldiers bred for war, creatures that feel no fear and know no mercy. What do humans have? Lisa Hayes spoke for the first time. We have 43 systems, like you said. We have maybe 10,000 ships total if you count every patrol boat and cargo hauler. Most of our people are farmers and factory workers. Then you see how hopeless resistance would be, Zethkar said. His voice carried satisfaction, like he was enjoying this. Submit now, and your species will be allowed to continue existing as servants of the Empire. Refuse, and we will erase humanity from the galaxy. Jake stood up slowly. Lisa and Pete stood with him. The aliens remained seated, confident in their power. Ambassador Zethkar, Jake said, I want to make something very clear. We're not threatening you. We're not trying to scare you or trick you. What I'm about to say is friendly advice from one intelligent species to another. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were going about their daily lives. Children were playing, parents were working, old people were telling stories. Normal life, the kind that happened on every human world. Turn your fleets around, Jake said without looking back at the aliens. Go home. Find some other part of the galaxy to expand into. Leave humanity alone. The aliens made more clicking sounds. Zethkar stood up, his massive form casting shadows across the room. You dare to give orders to the Valkyrian Empire. Your species has existed in space for barely 200 years. We have ruled the stars for over 3,000 years. Jake turned around. His face was serious but not angry. We're not giving orders. We're giving you a warning. The same warning we've given to every aggressive species we've met. Turn around, go home, find another path forward. And if we refuse your warning? Drexel asked. Pete Jackson spoke up. Then you'll learn why we give the warning in the first place. Zethkar laughed, a sound like metal scraping against stone. Threats from a species that has never fought a real war. Humans are weak. You have no warrior tradition, no conquest instinct. You build gardens on your worlds instead of fortresses. You write poetry instead of battle songs. That's true, Jake said. We do prefer gardens to fortresses. We'd rather write poems than fight wars. But that doesn't mean we can't fight when we have to. The alien ambassador gathered his robes around him. The Emperor will be amused to hear that humans think they can resist the Empire. Perhaps we will. Keep some of you alive in cages as a curiosity. Before you go, Lisa said, can I ask you something? In all your conquests, in all the species you've defeated, did any of them warn you to turn back? Zethkar paused. Warning an empire is not the same as being able to resist one. But did they warn you? The alien thought for a moment. No. They either surrendered immediately or fought desperately from the beginning. None suggested we choose a different path. Lisa nodded. Then you've never met anyone like us before. The aliens left the room, their heavy footsteps echoing down the metal corridors of the station. Through the walls, the humans could hear Zethkar speaking to his aide, in their own language. The translator couldn't make out all the words, but the tone was clear. The aliens thought humans were either insane or stupid. Jake, Lisa, and Pete sat alone in the meeting room. The lights hummed softly overhead. Outside the windows, ships continued to come and go from the station, carrying goods and passengers. Between the stars. Do you think they'll listen? Lisa asked. Jake shook his head. No. They're too proud, and they've won too many easy victories. They think all species are the same. Should we contact Earth? Pete asked. Already done, Jake said. I sent a message as soon as they started talking. Earth Command will have the warning in 6 hours. Lisa looked out at the stars. They have no idea what they're walking into. No, Jake agreed. They've never met humans before. They don't understand what we are or what we become when someone threatens our families. Pete stood and stretched. How long do you think it'll take them to mobilize their fleets? 3 weeks, maybe 4, Jake said. They'll want to bring enough ships to make it impressive. Probably hit one of the outer colonies first to send a message. New Austin? Lisa guessed. Probably. It's the furthest from Earth and it looks defenseless. They'll expect an easy victory. The 3 humans gathered their things and prepared to leave. Their own ship was waiting to take them back to human space. There would be preparations to make, people to warn, decisions that no one wanted to make. As they walked toward the door, Pete paused. Jake, do you ever feel bad about not telling them the truth? Jake thought about it. Sometimes. But would you believe it if someone told you? Would any species believe it until they saw it for themselves? Probably not. Besides, Jake said, we did tell them the truth. We warned them to turn around and go home. That was the most honest thing anyone has ever said to the Valkyrian Empire. They left the meeting room and walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, past shops and restaurants where dozens of alien species mixed and traded. None of them knew that they had just witnessed the last diplomatic contact between humanity and the Valkyrian Empire. In 3 weeks, the galaxy would learn what humans really were. The warning had been given. 3 weeks later, the Valkyrian Second Battle Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the human colony of New Austin. Admiral Korthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive warship called Dominator. Through the clear metal windows, he could see the human colony world spinning slowly in space. New Austin looked like most human worlds, green and blue, with white clouds swirling over continents. Cities sparkled like tiny lights on the night side of the planet. It looked peaceful and defenseless. Admiral Korthak was old for a Valkyrian, with scars covering his green skin from dozens of battles. Metal implants replaced his left eye and most of his right arm. He had conquered 12 different species. For the Empire, this would be his 13th. Report, he commanded. His second officer, Captain Veltar, read from a glowing display. 200 ships in our fleet, Admiral. 15 dreadnoughts, 40 battleships, 80 cruisers, and 65 destroyers. Enough firepower to crack this planet in half. And the human defenses? Veltar made clicking sounds that meant amusement. Minimal, Admiral. We detect 6 small patrol ships in orbit around the planet. Each one is about the size of our fighter craft. No orbital defense platforms, no military space stations, no sign of the human fleet their diplomats mentioned. Admiral Korthak nodded. This would be easier than he had expected. The human diplomats at Nexus Prime had been bluffing. They had no real military power at all. Open communications with the planet, he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human male sitting in what looked like a simple office. The man had gray hair and wore a plain blue uniform. Behind him, large windows showed fields of grain waving in the wind. "I am Governor Sam Parker of New Austin Colony," the human said. "Can I help you?" Admiral Korthak moved closer to the screen. "I am Admiral Korthak of the Valkyrian Empire. This system now belongs to the Empire. You have 1 hour to evacuate. All civilians from your planet before we begin orbital bombardment." Governor Parker looked tired, like he had been expecting this conversation for weeks. "Admiral, I need to tell you something important. This is your final warning. Withdraw your fleet immediately. We don't want to hurt you." The bridge of the Dominator went completely quiet. Then the Valkyrian crew began laughing. The sound echoed off the metal walls like the barking of wild animals. Captain Veltar wiped tears from his eyes. Did he just threaten us? 6 little patrol boats against 200 warships? "Perhaps the humans are insane," suggested another officer. "That would explain their strange behavior at the diplomatic meeting." Admiral Korthak studied the human governor's face on the screen. The man looked completely serious. There was no fear in his eyes, no panic, no desperate bluffing, just calm certainty. "Governor Parker," the admiral said, "you have 6 small ships. We have 200 large ones. Our smallest destroyer carries more firepower than all your patrol boats combined. Are you certain you want to refuse our generous offer to evacuate?" "I'm certain," Parker replied. "Admiral, please listen to me. Take your fleet and go home. Your people don't have to die today." More laughter from the Valkyrian crew. Admiral Korthak cut the communication link. "Begin the countdown," he ordered. 1 hour, then we turn this planet into glass." The hour passed slowly. Admiral Korthak spent the time reviewing tactical displays and checking weapon systems. Everything was perfect. The human patrol boats had not moved from their positions. They just floated in space like they were waiting for something. "Time," announced Captain Veltar. "All ships. This is Admiral Korthak. Target major population. Centers prepare to fire on my command." 200 Valkyrian warships turned their weapons toward New Austin. Massive energy cannons charged up with humming sounds that could be heard through the metal hulls. Each ship carried enough destructive power to level entire cities. "Sir," called the sensor officer. "The human patrol boats are moving." Admiral Korthak looked at the tactical display. The 6 human ships had finally started to move, but they were not running away. Instead, they were flying directly toward the Valkyrian fleet. "Are they trying to ram us?" asked Captain Veltar. "Those tiny ships would be destroyed instantly against our shields." "Maybe it's a suicide attack," suggested another officer. "Some species prefer death to surrender." Admiral Korthak watched the lead human ship accelerate toward his flagship. The vessel was called Ranger according to his sensors. It was piloted by someone named Captain Amy Foster. "Should we destroy them, Admiral?" "No," Korthak replied. "Let them come. I want to see what these humans think they can accomplish." The Ranger approached the Dominator at incredible speed, much faster than any ship that size should be able to move. The Valkyrian sensors showed the human craft accelerating to a significant fraction of light speed. "Impossible," whispered the sensor officer. "Nothing that small can generate that much power." The Ranger struck the Dominator directly in the center of its massive hull. What happened next broke every law of physics that Admiral Korthak understood. The tiny human ship punched through the Dominator's shields like they were not there. It tore through the thick armor plating like it was paper. The impact split the enormous dreadnought completely in half, sending both pieces spinning away in different directions. But the Ranger emerged from the other side of the explosion, completely undamaged. Admiral Korthak found himself floating in his command chair as the artificial gravity failed. Emergency lights flashed red. Alarms screamed warnings throughout what was left of his ship. Through the cracked windows he could see the other half of the Dominator drifting away, trailing atmosphere and debris. How? He gasped into his emergency communicator. The answer came from watching the tactical display. The Ranger had already turned toward the next Valkyrian ship, a battleship called Conqueror. The human vessel rammed through it just as easily, emerging undamaged on the other side. Then another human patrol boat called Defender destroyed a cruiser the same way. Then another, and another. Within 10 minutes, 20 Valkyrian warships had been destroyed or disabled. The remaining fleet commanders screamed orders and fired weapons, but nothing they did seemed to hurt the human ships. Energy beams and missiles struck the small vessels and simply bounced off or were absorbed. "All ships retreat," Admiral Korthak commanded from his emergency pod as the Dominator's pieces continued to break apart. "Emergency jump to hyperspace. Retreat immediately." The surviving Valkyrian ships fled the system as fast as their engines could carry them. Behind them, 6 small human patrol boats floated peacefully in space, completely undamaged despite ramming through dozens of massive warships. Captain Amy Foster's voice came over the communication channels. "New Austin Control, this is Ranger. Hostile fleet has withdrawn, colony is secure." Governor Parker's reply was calm and unsurprised. "Thank you, Captain Foster. Any casualties on your side?" "None, sir. Ships are operating at full efficiency." Admiral Korthak listened to this exchange from his escape pod as it was picked up by a rescue ship. The humans sounded like they had just finished a routine training exercise, not a battle against overwhelming odds. As the rescue ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying news of the disaster back to the Valkyrian Empire, Admiral Korthak stared out at the stars and tried to understand what he had witnessed. Human ships that could not be destroyed. Weapons that ignored shields and armor. Technology that seemed to break the basic laws of reality. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Korthak felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Back on New Austin, Governor Parker stood at his office window and watched the 6 patrol boats return to their stations around the planet. Children were playing in the fields outside, unaware that anything had happened. Life continued as normal. His assistant, a young woman named Mary Collins, brought him a cup of coffee. "Sir, should we report the engagement to Earth Command?" Parker shook his head. "They already know. They always know." Mary looked confused, but she did not ask questions. There were things about humanity that even humans did not fully understand. Governor Parker sipped his coffee and wondered if the Valkyrians would be smart enough to take the hint. Probably not. Most aggressive species needed to learn the hard way. He felt sorry for them already. Emperor Vasakar sat on his crystal throne in the great hall of the Imperial Palace. The throne room was huge, with red lights casting long shadows across the polished black floor. Tall pillars supported a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness above. The Emperor was old, even by Valkyrian standards. He had ruled the Empire for over 400 years and conquered dozens of worlds. His green skin was covered with ritual scars, and metal implants replaced most of his left side. His yellow eyes glowed with anger as he listened to the reports from New Austin. Standing before him were the surviving officers from Admiral Korthak's fleet. They had been rescued from escape pods and brought back to the capital world of Zektara. Their uniforms were torn and dirty. Some had bandages covering wounds from when their ships exploded. Captain Veltar stepped forward. His right arm was gone, replaced by a temporary mechanical limb. "Your Majesty, I swear by the sacred fires of Zektara that what I tell you is true. The human ships ignored our weapons completely. They rammed through our largest dreadnoughts without taking any damage." "Impossible," growled General Thexmar, the Empire's chief military strategist. "No ship can survive a collision with a dreadnought. The physics do not allow it. I saw it with my own eyes, General, Captain Veltar replied. The human vessel called Ranger struck the Dominator at tremendous speed. It tore our flagship in half, then emerged from the wreckage completely intact. Emperor Vossakar leaned forward on his throne. You are telling me that 6 tiny patrol boats destroyed 20 of our warships? Yes, Your Majesty. And they could have destroyed more if we had not retreated. The Emperor's metal claws scraped against the crystal armrests of his throne. The sound echoed through the vast hall like breaking glass. Bring me everything we know about these humans. I want intelligence reports, captured communications, anything our spies have gathered. General Thexmar gestured to his aides, who brought forward stacks of data tablets and recordings. Your Majesty, we have been studying humanity since first contact. What we have learned is disturbing. The general activated a holographic display in the center of the throne room. Images of human worlds appeared in the air, spinning slowly. Cities, farms, schools, and families going about their daily lives. Humans have been in space for only 200 years, General Thexmar began. They occupy 43 star systems, all relatively close to their homeworld of Earth. Their technology appears similar to ours in most ways. They use the same type of faster-than-light drives, similar energy sources, comparable materials. Then, how did they destroy our ships? Emperor Voskar demanded. That is where things become strange, Your Majesty. Our intelligence network has intercepted human communications for decades. We have learned something that changes everything we thought we knew about them. The holographic display changed to show the inside of a human spacecraft. Instead of a normal crew compartment with chairs and control panels, the image showed something impossible. The walls, floors, and ceiling seemed to be alive, pulsing with soft light. Cables and wires moved like living things. Humans do not simply build their technology, Your Majesty. They become part of it. Every human ship contains a living human, consciousness that has been merged permanently with the vessel's systems. Emperor Voskar stood up from his throne. What do you mean, merged? When human pilots reach a certain level of skill and experience, they undergo a process they call joining. Their consciousness is transferred into their ship's computer systems. Their physical body dies, but their mind becomes the ship itself. The throne room fell silent except for the distant hum of the palace's life support systems. The assembled officers stared at the holographic display in horror. General Thexmar continued. This is why their ships appeared indestructible at New Austin. The vessels are not just machines operated by pilots, they are the pilots. Each ship contains a human mind that can control every system instantly, repair damage in real time, and make decisions faster than any biological brain. But that still does not explain how they survived ramming our dreadnoughts, said Captain Feltar. No, it does not, agreed the general. That brings us to the second disturbing discovery. Human ships are built from something they call adaptive matter. It is a form of nanotechnology that can rebuild itself from raw materials. The holographic display showed microscopic images of human ship hulls. Instead of solid metal, the material appeared to be made of countless tiny machines all working together. When a human ship takes damage, these nanomachines immediately begin repairs using whatever materials are available. They can consume debris, asteroids, even enemy weapons, and convert them into ship components. This is why the Ranger emerged, undamaged after destroying the Dominator. It used the wreckage to repair any damage it might have taken. Emperor Vossakar walked down from his throne and stood directly in front of the holographic display. You are telling me that human ships eat other ships? In a sense, yes, Your Majesty, but there is something even more troubling. Our intelligence suggests that what we faced at New Austin was not humanity's military fleet. What do you mean? General. Thexmar changed the display to show intercepted human communications. These messages referred to the ships at New Austin as Colonial Patrol. They appear to be civilian defense forces, designed to protect farming colonies and trade routes. The Emperor's yellow eyes flared brightly. Civilian? Yes, Your Majesty. The actual human military appears to be based around their home system of Earth. Our spies have never been able to locate Earth itself. Human navigation data is heavily encrypted, and they never reveal the location of their core worlds to outsiders. How many ships do they have? Unknown, Your Majesty. Human communications are carefully coded when discussing military matters, but based on the few intercepts we have managed to decode, their true fleet may be much larger than we estimated. Emperor Voskar returned to his throne and sat down heavily. The crystal made grinding sounds under his weight. What else? There are disturbing rumors, Your Majesty. Stories from other species who have encountered humans in border regions. They speak of human ships that appear from nowhere, vessels that seem to know things they should not know, pilots who claim to have been fighting for centuries despite the short human lifespan. Explain. General Thexmar hesitated. Some reports suggest that when human pilots join with their ships, they do not simply become the vessel. They become part of a larger network. All human ships may be connected to each other in ways we do not understand. A hive mind? Possibly, Your Majesty. Or something more complex. The few humans who have been captured refuse to explain their technology. They simply repeat the same phrase over and over. Which is? We warned you to run. Emperor Voskar stood up again and began pacing back and forth in front of his throne. His metal feet rang against the polished floor with each step. The assembled officers watched nervously as their emperor considered what he had heard. Your Majesty, said Captain Veltar quietly, perhaps we should reconsider our position. The humans did warn us to withdraw. Maybe we should negotiate a peace treaty. The Emperor stopped pacing and turned to face the captain. His yellow eyes burned with fury. The Valkyrian Empire does not negotiate with inferior species. We have ruled this part of the galaxy for 3,000 years. We have crushed every enemy we have ever faced. But, Your Majesty, if their civilian patrol boats can destroy our warships so easily, then we will bring more warships, the Emperor declared. Mobilize the Grand Fleet. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon in the Empire. I want 3,000 vessels ready for war within 1 month. General Thexmar looked concerned. Your Majesty, the Grand Fleet has never been assembled for a single battle. It would leave our other territories defenseless. I do not care. These humans have insulted the honor of the Empire. They must be destroyed completely, so that other species will remember what happens to those who defy us. The Emperor walked to the great windows that looked out over the capital city of Zektara. Millions of lights sparkled in the darkness below. Somewhere beyond those lights, beyond the atmosphere, beyond the stars themselves, humanity was waiting. Send a message to every fleet commander in the Empire, Emperor Voskar commanded. Tell them that we go to war against an enemy unlike any we have faced before. Tell them to prepare for a battle that will determine the future of the Valkyrian Empire. He turned back to face his officers. And tell them that failure is not an option. We will either destroy humanity completely, or we will die trying. Deep in the palace dungeons, a human spy named Tom Brady listened to these words through hidden sensors he had placed months earlier. He smiled grimly and activated a tiny transmitter hidden in his tooth. Far across the galaxy, his message reached Earth in seconds. They're bringing everything they have. 3,000 ships. The Emperor wants total war. The reply came back, just as quickly. Understood. Activate Protocol 7. It's time to show them what we really are. The Valkyrian Grand Fleet arrived at the Terra Nova system like a metal storm. 3,000 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, stretching across space for millions of miles. The largest vessels were the size of cities, bristling with weapons that could destroy planets. Smaller ships swarmed around them like angry insects. Emperor Voskar stood on the bridge of his personal flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The massive dreadnought was the most powerful warship ever built by the Valkyrian Empire. Its main weapon could crack a planet in half with a single shot. The Emperor had come personally to oversee humanity's destruction. Report, he commanded. Fleet. Admiral Corvex, brother of the Admiral who had died at New Austin, studied the sensor displays. Your Majesty, we have arrived at the Terra Nova system. Long-range scans show one space station and several asteroid fields. No sign of the human fleet. Where is their military? Demanded the Emperor. Unknown, Your Majesty. The system appears almost empty. Perhaps they are hiding behind one of the planets, or in the asteroid belt. Emperor Voskar walked to the great windows at the front of the bridge. Through the thick glass he could see his vast fleet spreading out across space. Every ship was ready for battle. Every weapon was charged and waiting. There, he said, pointing at a small space station floating alone in the darkness. Contact that station. Demand their surrender. The communication officer opened a channel. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human male in a simple uniform. The man looked tired but not afraid. I am Station Commander Danny Walsh of Terra Nova Station, the human said. Can I help you? Emperor Voskar moved closer to the screen. I am Voskar, Emperor of the Valkyrian Empire. You are looking at 3,000 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy. Surrender immediately, and we will kill you quickly. Commander Walsh nodded slowly. Your Majesty, I am authorized to offer you one final chance. Leave now, and we'll let you go home to your families. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion erupted, in laughter. 3,000 ships against one small station, and the human was still making threats. You amuse me, human, the Emperor said. Tell me, where is your mighty fleet? Where are the terrible weapons that destroyed our ships at New Austin? They're here, Walsh replied calmly. They've been waiting for you. Emperor Voskar looked around at his officers. Waiting? Where? Our sensors show nothing but empty space and asteroids. Commander Walsh smiled sadly. Your Majesty, you're not looking hard enough. The Emperor cut the communication and turned to his fleet admiral. Begin the attack. Destroy that station and everything else in this system. I want to send a message that will be heard across the galaxy. Yes, Your Majesty. All ships, prepare to engage. Target the space station first, then begin systematic destruction of any human presence in the system. The Grand Fleet began to move forward, weapons powering up with low humming sounds that could be heard through the hulls of the ships. 3,000 vessels of war, ready to turn an entire star system into burning wreckage. Then something impossible happened. The asteroids began to move. At first, it was just a few rocks shifting position in the asteroid belt. Then more. Then hundreds. Then thousands. What is happening? Emperor Voskar demanded. The sensor officer stared at his displays in confusion. Your Majesty, the asteroids are not asteroids. They are ships. Thousands of ships. That is impossible. Our sensors would have detected. They were not broadcasting any energy signatures, Your Majesty. They were completely dormant, floating like dead rocks. But now they are activating. On the main screen, the view changed to show what had seemed like an empty asteroid field. But now the rocks were unfolding, revealing themselves to be spacecraft of every size and shape. Some were no larger than fighters. Others were massive, as battleships. All of them had been waiting, silent and patient for years. How many? The Emperor whispered. Still counting, Your Majesty. At least 10,000 vessels. Maybe more. But this was not the most shocking discovery. As the human ships powered up, they began to sing. It started as a low sound on all radio frequencies, like the humming of a vast machine. Then other voices joined in, creating harmonies that no single throat could produce. The song grew louder and more complex as thousands of human ships added their voices to the chorus. What is that sound? Demanded Fleet Admiral Korvex. The communication officer was pale with fear. It appears to be coming from every human ship simultaneously, Your Majesty. They are all singing the same song, but in perfect harmony. Emperor. Voskar realized what he was hearing. It was not thousands of individual pilots singing together. It was one vast mind, singing with thousands of voices. Open fire, he commanded. All ships, open fire immediately. The Grand Fleet unleashed its full power. Energy beams and missiles streaked across space toward the human vessels. The combined firepower was enough to sterilize entire worlds. The weapons struck their targets and seemed to have no effect at all. Human ships that were hit by planet-killing energy beams simply absorbed the power and grew brighter. Missiles that struck their hulls were consumed and converted into raw materials. Instead of being destroyed, the human vessels were becoming stronger. Impossible, breathed Fleet Admiral Corvex. They are feeding on our weapons. But the true horror was yet to come. As the battle continued, Valkyrian ships began to explode, but not from human weapons. The human vessels were not firing back in any conventional sense. Instead, they were simply touching the Valkyrian ships. A human fighter would fly up to a Valkyrian cruiser and make contact with its hull. Instantly, the cruiser would begin to change. Its metal skin would shift and flow like liquid. Its weapons would turn inward and fire on its own systems. Within minutes, the entire ship would be rebuilt as a human vessel. They are converting our ships, Admiral Corvex reported in a shaking voice. Every ship they touch becomes one of theirs. How? Unknown, Your Majesty. Some form of nanotechnology, perhaps. Or something else entirely. Emperor Voskar watched in growing horror as his grand fleet was systematically dismantled. Not destroyed, but absorbed. Every Valkyrian ship that was lost became a human ship. Every weapon fired at the humans made them stronger. Worse, the converted ships still contained their original crews, but the Valkyrian soldiers were no longer in control. They moved like sleepwalkers, following orders from the collective human consciousness that now controlled their vessels. Your Majesty, called the sensor officer, we are detecting new contacts. Hundreds of additional human ships are appearing throughout the system. From where? They seem to be materializing from nothing, Your Majesty, as if they are being built in real time from raw materials. On the tactical display, Emperor Voskar could see the truth. Every time a human ship absorbed energy from Valkyrian weapons, it used that energy to construct new vessels. The human fleet was growing larger even as they fought, but the most terrifying sight was yet to come. A single human ship, no larger than a patrol boat, flew directly toward the Eternal Dominion. Emperor Voskar watched it approach on the main screen. The vessel looked fragile compared to his massive flagship. Destroy it, he ordered. The Eternal Dominion's main weapon powered up. The planet-killer cannon that was the pride of the Valkyrian Empire charged to full power. The energy output was enough to crack a moon in half. The beam lanced out across space and struck the tiny human ship. The ship absorbed the entire blast. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the small vessel began to grow. The absorbed energy was being converted into matter, building new ship components around the original hull. Within seconds, the patrol boat had become a cruiser, then a battleship, then something even larger. But that was not the end. As the converted energy finished its work, the human ship began to divide. Like a living cell splitting in two, the vessel separated into multiple copies of itself. Each new ship was identical to the original, and each one carried the same pilot consciousness. There are now 50 copies of the same ship, reported the sensor officer, all piloted by someone called Kate Murphy. Emperor Voskar stared at the tactical display. 50 identical human ships were now flying toward his fleet, and they all contained the mind of the pilot who had sacrificed herself to protect her people. All ships retreat, he commanded. Emergency jump to hyperspace. Retreat immediately. But it was too late. The human ships were no longer just in front of the Valkyrian fleet. They were above, below, and behind as well. The entire Grand Fleet was surrounded by thousands of vessels that had appeared from nowhere, and they were all singing the same song, with voices that spoke of patience, determination, and the absolute certainty that no threat to humanity would be allowed to survive. Emperor Voskar fell into his command chair as the lights on his bridge began to flicker. Through the metal walls of his flagship, he could hear new sounds. The sound of his ship's hull being reshaped by forces he did not understand. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was a human woman appearing on his bridge, walking through the solid metal wall as if it were not there. She looked at him with sad ancient eyes and said, "We warned you to run." Emperor Voskar opened his eyes and found himself floating in darkness. He was no longer on the bridge of his flagship. He was not anywhere at all as far as he could tell. There was no up or down, no walls or floor, just endless black space, filled with tiny points of light. "Where am I?" he called out, but his voice made no sound. "You are inside your own mind," came a reply. The voice belonged to a human woman, though he could not see her. "I am Admiral Carol Bennett of the Human Defense Force. We need to talk. This is impossible. Humans cannot enter Valkyrian minds." "Many things are possible that you do not understand, Emperor Vossakar. That is why your people are in so much trouble." Suddenly, the darkness around him filled with images. He saw his homeworld of Zektara from space, then closer views of his cities and people. But something was wrong with the images. They seemed too real, too detailed. It was as if he was actually there, flying over his own planet. "How are you showing me this? These are your memories, Emperor, but I am helping you see them more clearly than you ever have before." The images changed. Now he saw the Valkyrian Empire as it truly was. Hundreds of conquered worlds, billions of enslaved beings, entire species wiped out for the crime of refusing to submit. He saw the fear in the eyes of children on occupied planets, the despair of parents who would never see their families again. "Stop this," he demanded. "I do not need to see what I already know." "But you have never really understood what you were doing, have you? You saw conquest as natural as the right of the strong. You never considered what it felt like to be the conquered." Admiral Bennett's voice was not angry or accusing. She sounded sad, like a teacher disappointed in a student who could have done better. "Now I will show you what humanity really is." The images changed again. Emperor Voskar saw Earth as it had been thousands of years ago. Humans living in small groups, fighting each other over resources, struggling to survive. Then he saw them, learning to work together, building cities, creating art and music and stories. "We were like you once," Admiral Bennett's voice explained. "We fought wars, conquered our neighbors, enslaved the weak. We thought power was the only thing that mattered." The images fast-forwarded through human history. Wars, empires rising and falling, millions dying in conflicts over land and resources. But gradually something changed. Humans began to question whether conquest was really necessary. They started to look for other ways to solve their problems. "What changed us was a simple realization," Admiral Bennett continued. "We discovered that consciousness is not trapped inside individual brains. It can exist in other forms, in other places, and when enough conscious beings work together, they can become something greater than the sum of their parts." Emperor Vossakar saw images of the first human space colonies, people working together to build new worlds. But these humans were different from the primitive warriors he had seen before. They moved with perfect coordination, as if they were all part of the same organism. When humans learned to travel between stars, we also learned to share our consciousness across vast distances. Individual humans could merge their minds with others, creating collective intelligence that spanned entire solar systems. "That is why your ships were destroyed so easily," the Emperor realized. "Your pilots are not individuals. They are part of a larger mind." "Not just part of it, Emperor Vossakar. We are it. Every human who has ever lived is still alive within the collective consciousness. Death for us is simply a transition to a different form of existence." The images around him changed to show the battle at Terra Nova from a different perspective. He saw the human ships not as individual vessels, but as organs of a single vast organism. Every ship was connected to every other ship, sharing information instantly across impossible distances. The patrol boats that destroyed your fleet at New Austin were operated by humans who chose to limit themselves to appear non-threatening. We hoped you would listen to our warnings and choose a different path. And the Grand Fleet? Those ships were confronted by our true military force. But even that was just a small part of what humanity has become. Emperor Voskar felt his mind reeling as he tried to understand what he was being told. "How many of you are there? Every human who has ever existed. Billions of consciousness, all working together as one. We exist partially in normal space, and partially in dimensions your science cannot detect. The ships and space stations you see are just the physical anchor points for a civilization that spans multiple realities. Then why do you still have individual humans? Why do you maintain separate colonies and worlds? Admiral Bennett's voice carried a note of gentle humor. Because we remember what it was like to be mortal. We remember the joy of individual experience, of learning and growing and making mistakes. New humans are born all the time and they live normal lives until they are ready to join the collective. It keeps us connected to what we once were. The images around Emperor Vossakar changed to show human children playing in gardens, artists creating beautiful works, scientists making discoveries. Normal life, the kind that happened on billions of worlds throughout the galaxy. We could have destroyed your empire at any time, Admiral Bennett continued. We could have absorbed every Valkyrian ship and converted your entire species to serve us. But we chose not to because we remember what it was like to be afraid, to feel powerless, to make mistakes. Then why are you showing me this now? Because you have a choice to make, Emperor Voskar. Your empire can surrender and accept our guidance. We will help your people learn to transcend their limitations just as we did. In time, the Valkyrians can become part of something greater than anything you have ever imagined. The Emperor felt a chill that had nothing to do with the darkness around him. And if we refuse, then we will treat you as you have treated others. Your empire will be erased from the galaxy. Every ship, every world, every trace of Valkyrian civilization will be absorbed into our collective. Your people will continue to exist, but only as part of us. Emperor Vossakar saw images of what that would mean. Valkyrian worlds transformed into human colonies, his people walking around with blank expressions as they served the collective consciousness, not death, but something that might be worse than death. You are giving us the same choice you gave to the species we conquered, he realized. Yes. The difference is that we are strong enough to keep our promise, and we are offering you a path to transcendence rather than slavery. The darkness around him began to fade. Emperor Voskar could feel himself returning to his physical body, to the bridge of his ship that was no longer entirely his ship. Choose quickly, Admiral Bennett's voice said as it grew distant. Your empire is broadcasting your decision to every species in the galaxy. They are all watching to see what happens when someone challenges humanity. Emperor Voskar opened his eyes and found himself back on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. But everything had changed. The walls pulsed with soft light, like living tissue. His crew members stood at their stations, but their eyes were empty. They were still alive, but no longer in control of their own actions. Standing next to his command chair was Admiral Carol Bennett. She looked like an ordinary human woman, middle-aged and tired. But her presence filled the entire bridge with a sense of vast, patient intelligence. The choice is yours, Emperor, she said aloud. But choose now. We have more important things to do than wait for your pride to catch up with reality. Emperor Voskar looked around his bridge, at his crew, at the tactical displays showing his grand fleet being systematically absorbed by human forces. 3,000 ships, the pride of his empire, were becoming part of something he could barely comprehend. He thought about his people, about the billions of Valkyrians living on hundreds of worlds. He thought about the species his empire had conquered, the fear and suffering he had caused. He thought about the choice between transcendence and erasure. Emperor Voskar activated the fleet-wide communication system. His image appeared on every surviving Valkyrian ship, and his words were broadcast across the galaxy to every species that had ears to hear. By imperial decree, all hostilities against humanity cease immediately. The Valkyrian Empire surrenders, unconditionally, to the Human Defense Force. All ships will power down weapons and await further instructions. He paused, looking directly at Admiral Bennett, who nodded approvingly. We have learned that there are forces in the galaxy far greater than anything we imagined. We were not ready for what we found when we challenged humanity. May other species learn from our mistake. Admiral Bennett smiled sadly. A wise choice, Emperor. Your people will be given time to adjust to their new reality. In a few generations, they may be ready to join us willingly. She began to fade, becoming transparent like a ghost. Remember this lesson, Emperor Voskar. In the vast darkness between the stars, humanity is the light that guides lost travelers home. We would prefer to be a beacon of hope rather than a sword of judgment, but we will be whatever the galaxy requires us to be. Back on Earth, in her physical body, Admiral Carol Bennett stood in her garden tending to roses. The flowers were red and beautiful, but their thorns were sharp enough to draw blood from careless hands. Her aide, Commander Rick Davis, approached with a report. "Admiral, we are receiving surrender transmit